It's up north of Union Grove on Highway U, and it's a duck processing plant. How's that? Does that sound good? Been in Union Grove, many people and their children and generations of people worked at the duck farm. So I acquired a scrapbook of one of the employees a couple of years ago. It came via Florida. Moved to Florida with the family, and they decided that it should come back to Union Grove. So we've had a history of C&D Duck Farm on the burner for a couple of years, and here it is tonight. Other than, my guests, we were talking about C&D Duck Farm would stand, I don't want to give too much of the program away, but that stand, the two men that got together and started it were named Cooper and Dixon, and we have family members from the Coopers, yes. It's Hugh, Gene is dead. Hugh and Greg Walrath are here. Their dad eventually bought with his partner, bought the C&D Duck Farm. And we have Dawn Dixon Hoffman, and she is the granddaughter of Clayton Dixon, who started the duck farm. And Blaine Peterson is here also as an invitation from me, because his dad loyally worked at duck farm how many years? 50 years. Am I missing anybody that's related to C&D Duck Farms? Judy Savage is here. Her dad worked loyally at C&D Duck Farm for how many years, Judy? You know?
I don't know. A long time. as long as I can remember.
As long as you can remember, yeah. I'll leave it at that. So I have a few slides made just because I didn't know how the program would go, and I kind of tried to feel a little professional. But well, I'll quickly go through these slides. We can. The relatives that are here have brought items, and they want to talk about them too. So generate your questions, or tell us all you know about C&D Duck Farm, because I know probably everybody here knows someone that worked there. I'll quickly go through these. I don't want to do all the talking.
Can we catch half the lights so you can see?
Oh yeah, Judy, behind you is the light switch. Perfect.
There's a bunch of switches.
Now if you can't see, can we move?
Is that good? Or do you want those off too?
Sure, you can have that one off. If you can't see, I'll move a screen, or there we go. Now can you get back to your seat? We're kind of old. Cooper Dixon Duck Farm. See, that's pretty small. It's in sections 3 and 4 in Yorkville, which is the middle two sections, and it was 80 acres of William Cooper, who anticipated that his son Archie Cooper would farm 80 acres with him, and they eventually bought another 40. Probably correct me if I'm not telling the story, but that's what I can see on the plat maps of 1908. He already owned 100 acres, 80 acres. But their son Archie wasn't really interested in farming for the rest of his life. So he was trying to figure out how to get out of farming. This is the only pictures I have of Archie and Edith Cooper. He was a young man. He was 35 when he started Cooper Dixon Duck Farm, but this is the picture I have because they finally slowed down long enough to get a picture taken. Archie and his friend Clayton Dixon decided to grow into ducks. Now, why they picked ducks, I don't know. Did I miss one? Yes. There you go. I did learn, and I want to share that Clayton was living with the Dixons at the time, which I didn't know, and maybe that's not right, but we can talk about that later. But anyways, Clayton was living with Archie and his parents, and that's how they got to be good friends and started the duck farm. From the memoir written by one of the Dixons, it said that Jim and Elizabeth were the original financiers of Cooper Dixon Duck Farm. I don't That's what I read. Okay, so the Coopers and the Dixons worked hard and decided they were getting older and decided they were done with Cooper-Dixon Duck Farm. And in 1948, they started looking for a prospect to buy it from them. And of course, they looked from within. I don't know if this is correct, but that's what one of the newspaper articles said, that Alfred Rood and Eugene Walrath were employed by Cooper-Dixon before they bought it. You think so?
That's true, very true.
That's true. Like I said, I got most of my information from newspaper articles. And when we got young entrepreneurs, they had started to expand. That picture's from 1964. I think Dawn will tell us, and so will the Walraths, there's one house left on Highway U yet, but that used to be just two little farmhouses right along the road. And the one house went down, but the second one is still standing. So one of the articles told me that they went from the original 80 acres that William Cooper had to over 1,000. And what I didn't get down is how many places they had them in Dover, and they had other places besides this location in Racine. Go ahead.
On the original C&D property, next to that would be the York Farm. Across Highway U would have been the Pekin Farm.
Great.
And then north on Highway U, I'm not sure what road that is.
3 Mile.
3 Mile, okay, was the Downey Farm.
Yeah.
And then Dover Farm was out on Highway 20.
Ah, okay.
Still there,
Yeah. Does it operate?
It does operate.
Wasn't there also one Grove Duck Farm?
Yeah,
Grove.
kind of across from the main.
Don Grove.
Oh, Don Grove, yeah.
Yeah, because Don was the bookkeeper for years, wasn't he? Mike, seems to me that was right.
I think so. But he had a few houses that he was growing them too.
Yeah.
Cooper-Dixon Duck Farm was the only duck farm that employed a veterinarian full-time. He was on the duck farm full-time. He was their mind as far as genetics and production. Blaine, you have to look close at this one. That's
Oh, yeah.
Mel Peterson in the bottom, and those are racks of eggs. I found a few interesting statistics. In '64, they were producing 850,000 ducklings a year. Then they went to Tulip City in Michigan, which was a hatchery. And for years, tell me if I'm wrong, but for years they supplied Cooper-Dixon with chicks that were 3 or 4 days old.
Yeah.
And they could do 100,000 in a week. Downey Duck Farm, maybe that's not right then, I might be wrong with that. In Dover, built in 1880, was a top of the line innovation, and they could produce 155,000 ducklings in a week. That would be 3 or 4 day old ducklings coming to a Highway U. And then the next thing is that they could produce it only took 7 weeks or 8 weeks for them to produce a full grown duck. This is Russell Nielsen, which both him and his daughter and his son reached out to me. And the son lives in Washington State, and the daughter is in Florida. So they both wish they could come. And the theme is that local men started out in C&D Duck Farm and finished their careers. And there was a key group of men that, and I shouldn't say men and women, who worked for years, a lifetime, through C&D Ducks and watched them grow tremendously. Cooper-Dixon ducks could reach their desirable 7-pound market weight in 7 weeks. So that was economic because you only had to feed them for 7 weeks and move them through. A duck which has more meat and less fat, and that's what Dr. Lynn did besides monitoring the health of the duck. Dr. Lynn selected genetically Peking ducks, and they said in one of the articles that the original Peking duck from China would look nothing like the duck that we produced in Highway U. Big throughout the world they were. Now, at the end, I don't think they ended up with ducks on the outside. Were they? Did they? Yeah, they were all in the house.
Sure.
But I can remember when they were outside. So that because I'm old. Yeah. I didn't identify who's chasing ducks, but there they are. Maybe they're Hugh and Greg. Not a lot of inside pictures always, but a few brochures had inside pictures. I didn't know much about the processing other than lots of people work there. And yeah, that's what I know about processing. Hopefully someone else will. They won a lot of awards. When they first bought the building, first bought the business, the Walrath-Rue combination, the only distribution of C&D Duck Farm was in the Milwaukee area. And of course, they hired a marketing person and they end up going throughout the world, a C&D Duck. Restaurants and grocery stores and whatever other distributions they had. Of course, the health department was there, and the USDA people came in, always would grade them A. That would be a celebration for them. And they had a C&D gold label. I think one of the boys will tell us what that means, but I'm sure it was an honor. This is Mel Peterson too, and one of the brochures says, you want to buy a duck, do you want to buy duck feet, and do you want to buy duck feathers? I think Judy will finish that story for us in a few minutes. But that's Mr. Rude and Mel Peterson again,
Yep.
with a box full of duck feet. This is what Judy Sams will talk about. I'm not going to steal the show from her, but this was another venture, a way that they finished out byproducts from C&D Duck Farm. These two little boys, I don't know what they were doing, but that's Hugh and Greg Walrath, and they got swaggled into doing this picture for the newspaper, and they were thrilled about it.
Yeah, when I saw that picture, I said, Greg, you're having a lot more fun than I was.
And it was a family business, whether the employees would the employees brought their kids to see. Judy would tell me stories that she was there, and I remember going into the chick barns too, just on a Saturday, and then I also found out as I was reading is that if your mother worked there, then you worked there, or your dad worked there, or, it was kind of a family affair for employment in the area. Summertime, like Judy said, summertime was where the high school kids came to duck farm and work. On a side, I also read that C&D would hire people from Southern Colony, and I was told that they would even bring a bus or somehow transport them back and forth. Mm-hmm. And they got a couple awards for being, open-minded and acceptable and patient with the people from the colony that would come and work for the duck farm. And after you are done with the duck farm, you still aren't, because you have coffee with your retired friends, and while you were working there, you always celebrated all the weddings and the birthdays and the retirements and the anniversaries, not only wedding anniversaries, but your anniversary for working at C&D Duck Farm. It was a big family affair. Our community. Oops. There's a little history, and it's it's probably ended in the 70s or 80s as far as the history is concerned, but I made copies out on the table if you want to grab one. I just wanted to thank the people that helped me and inspired me and gave me information. Irv Wolf family sent me that big binder, his daughter did, and they put together about everything you wanted to see of Irv's from the duck farm. It's got his notices for raises, it's got his letters from when the company changed hands, and it's a complete booklet of his from his work. Hugh and Greg Walrath are here and they're going to share some things. And Dawn called me, Dawn Dixon called me, and I had to call her back and say, okay, who are you? So she was gracious and said, and explained it to me. And I hope everyone had a good time. Now let's see, I'm going to end up with, I know Thursday we're having turkey, but we could have ducks for duck farm. Okay.
You want the lights on?
Yeah, please. The little chickies. Not chickies.
Ducklings.
Ducklings.
This will be probably very extemporaneous, but first of all, thank you for considering this for this evening tonight. We're both very honored and humbled by having you on here and meeting people we've heard so much about and never met before. So, I don't know. You want to just kick around stuff about growing up?
Marge,
Yeah.
they need to move a little
Barb
that
asked
way.
Yeah.
When did
Why don't you come over this way and then our videotape will see you.
Barb asked, when did you first start working on the farm? And I said to Greg, I think whenever you got a work permit back then, which could have been like 9 or 10, I think
14.
14, something like that. Yeah.
13.
And I think our birthday presents were a shovel at that time, to say, because that's what we did most of the time. So, yeah. But the old days, you talk about the family part of this thing. I remember how many winters, heavy winters, that a lot of the employees couldn't get home. And so we opened up the house and we'd have a bunch of people staying over in our rooms, because we had the beds and rooms the same way, because they couldn't get home. So that's the part of the family thing. And we used to have family picnics all the time in the summertime. But things evolved and grew, so.
I know, I just was, when I talked about Cooper and Dixon, and I never knew Mr. Dixon, but I do remember my grandpa telling me that when they first started with the ducks, he would take a big truck into Milwaukee, and he said if he sold all the ducks, coming back down Highway U, he'd start blowing the horn about a mile out for everyone to start getting more ducks so he could put them in a crate and drive right back to Milwaukee.
Yeah, that was Archie's job, because I think he would load up and would sell to a lot of the restaurants up in that area at that time. As fate has it, as years go on, one of the people that they used to sell to was Kissinger Meat. It was a wholesaler, a meat purveyor up in Milwaukee. And if you ever remember, anybody remember John Earth's Cafe in Milwaukee? Yeah, been there? Did you ever have their duck? It was owned by the Lindenbergs, and Jimmy and Susie Lindenberg are dear friends of ours today. And he would say we would only buy C&D ducks because we knew the quality was always there, and the sizes were perfect for cooking. And he actually shared with me some things that I'll share with you if anybody has interest in how to create the perfect duck at your house. So I brought some of the recipes with me today too. So.
Oh, by the way, we did have duck pets. Who would have guessed? I mean, most people have dogs and cats. We actually had a duck. We had 2 ducks, 3 ducks, I think. I think that was the duck's ploy to get out of going to the other part of the farm. They would just hang out with us. But yeah, we even had duck pets.
Pico and Hawk, and Pico was the one first who came up, and we had Weimaraners at that time. I had a Weimaraner, and so we were sitting up playing out in the yard, and this little guy comes wandering up on the lawn, and we're going, oh yeah, this is another duck. Well, there's a few of them. There's a few more out there. So what's the big deal about this one? and it stuck with us, right? So-
Yeah, it imprinted on us.
It imprinted, yeah, exactly. So we raised it, now it got to be the 7 weeks, and you notice that all my friends are being carted down to the plant, you know, but I'm not, I'm staying here. And so he lasted, at 7 weeks we would kill. And, but he lasted 8 years.
Oh, wow.
We
Yeah,
kept
his demise was sad for us. He did have other habits. One was chasing cars. It just doesn't work out.
he went through 3 wives, 3 females, and we'd find eggs all over the farm. Yeah, he did it. He got hit by a car. Yeah, right.
Times.
Yeah.
But anyway, thank you. I don't have much more.
I don't know. Do I have anything?
Sure,
I mean,
sure you do.
there's got to be tons more stuff.
What were your jobs?
After the shoveling, you mean? I mean, where do we graduate
No.
from the shovel?
Did you graduate to the plant?
No.
That's a good question.
No,
That's a
wow.
great- that's an
That's a
excellent
good question.
question.
Because
No.
I didn't want to work for my dad. And I just didn't, you know?
Oh, it's fun.
Yeah. I was not into that, and so I was on the farm, and that's where I wanted to be.
I just thought it was scary down there. I mean, I'm a lot younger, by the way. I just thought it was scary down there because all these ladies are down there giggling, and I mean, it was like, yeah, I can give you that. So we were farm hands mostly, you know. But you know, as what do we have about on the farm too? We probably had like 14 farm hands, and the rest of the employees were in the plant down there, you know. So there was you got to know everybody, and you grew up in that area, in the farming community, and names like Albert McConan. Some of my early memories on the farm were Albert McConan was just a great guy that brought the feed in. He had feed brought in by railroad cars. They dump it in a truck, and then we bring it over to the farm. And Albert was the feed guy. And I remember as a kid just taking naps in the feed truck. You know, I know because I was probably like 8, 9, 10 years old. But that's what we did. We just walked up to the farm and you know, everybody out there took care of everybody. You know, back in those days.
I guess it's proper to say they had the most colorful bunch of people working on. I mean, Don Lutke. I don't know.
Yeah.
Donnie
Don
Lutke was
Lutke,
dear
Donnie,
heart.
he was just like the kindest man. And then there were people that were just, they would come into work and after spending the whole night hunting coon. And then they had all their coon stories. So for a little kid growing up, this was just great. So I guess I remember more of the stories and the people I worked with.
And there were a lot of stories we couldn't share with mom and dad either.
No.
I mean, it was probably that. I'm really right. But you know, Petersons. I would think about people that we used to work with, and your dad, of course, was just went right up through the ranks and very running the place. You know, Alan Peterson. Alan Peterson would that be your
My dad's cousin.
your dad's cousin? Yeah. And then Jimmy Peterson.
That was my grandpa.
Your grandpa.
That's my
That was
dad's
Mel's.
dad.
That was Mel's dad. Now Jimmy Peterson, he's about this big, right? And a wiry guy with I don't think he didn't shave like since way before World War I. I'm sure, right? You know? Yeah.
Yeah, he
But-
looked quite a girl, yeah.
He was just a terrific guy. He had a laugh that you can never forget. Jimmy was an awesome guy, you know. And I couldn't remember who's the feather guy. I drew a blank on his name. He was another really guy and terrific guy too.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. There's some really great stories. Yeah, Donnie and well, Russ Nielsen. I think that any one of us who worked on the farm kind of looked at him as a coach. You know, not only just being the foreman of the farm, but you know, he took. You think how many high school kids came to work at the duck farm, and Russ was kind of like everybody's coach, you know, and yeah, we did a lot of stuff that we screwed up on, and he'd say, yeah, we'll fix it, you know, it'll be okay, you know. Once we were moving from the second house, well, from the Bruder house, we're cleaning that out, and we use these elevators, farm elevators, right? So you put the manure and the bottom part goes up into a dump truck up here. And I remember, it was one of, not you or I, but one of the high school kids that I was hanging out, decides to move the dump truck. And if you move the dump truck and catch the top of the elevator, what happens to the bottom? It generally pivots, right? So the dump truck was moving and the bottom of the thing, and we took off a door, I know that. But everything was okay, you know?
You didn't get fired.
Yeah, no. Let's say the dinner was a little chilly.
Yeah,
At that time, you know.
Did you have any pictures that you wanted to show? I know you came in with them.
I've got a couple things here, and some of the. Well, this is Dad and Alva in their later years. Dad, when he retired, Dad couldn't sit down very long because he's like the rest of us, he just don't sit down. He ended up at the very end working in Florida at an organization, a mission organization called ITEC. And it was an organization that created mission equipment for the mission field. So my dad was a welder, and he created all the lines in the duct plant. You know, every time he did an expansion, all those lines had to be redone. And so your dad, Lenny Osmond, great people that worked with Dad to get all of that infrastructure squared away so you could ramp up production as big as it was. And then, and Alva is a Cooper. This is William and Mary, and then Archie and Edith, their son, who took over the farm at that point. They're just not having a good time. I mean, they just don't smile. I found this, and I don't know, you can pass this around, come up and take a look at it. There's a lot of people in a collage kind of a thing, and somebody did this back in 1976.
Oh, wow.
So I don't think there's a couple people I recognize and a whole lot more. You might recognize more than I know, but we can leave that out here. What else have we got here? Well, that's one of the original duck trucks. This is the feed elevator on the farm. So after we brought the feed back, then there'd be another elevator to take it up to the top. And then this tractor, the John Deere, with a feed bin, they drop the feed down, and then this with an auger would go and fill up all the bins in the farms, the buildings themselves. And that's a picture of that. I don't know if I have a whole lot more. The rest of the stuff we can just, a lot of it has to do with when the sale took place. The sale took place in 1974. At that point, Schlitz owned a company called Murphy Products in Burlington, and they used that because the feed products could use the spent hops from the brewery. And so they created more feed out of that. And so through Murphy Products, Schlitz bought C&D. And really, they did a good job with it for a while until Schlitz got to be so diversified. The stuff that they were involved with at that time, more than just beer making, was bizarre. You know, and the E-lines, you know. But then they finally sold it to Maple Leaf, who currently has it today. You asked about the black label.
Yes.
Back in until about the late, let me think. Until about the late 60s, we didn't do any marketing at all. I mean, if it was Archie driving this stuff up there, and Archie died, and after that, I don't think they did any marketing until right around the late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah, Jim Christensen?
He became president when Bud Root went CEO effectively. But his son-in-law, what's his son-in-law? Lonnie's husband started out doing some of the marketing stuff, and then they started doing brochures, getting into the restaurateur associations, getting all the groceries lined up for things. Century at that point was big, and they adopted us pretty big. They did television commercials in the 60s with Weber cookers. lined up, you know, and that was like a big thing. It was Bobby Line and McKeithen was the president of Schlitz at the time. So they had all these things going. It was like a big summertime soiree, you know, during their drinking Schlitz beer, of course, you know. So and that's when the marketing kind of took off, which really expanded the production and so forth. So, you know, so if anybody has, this is our world famous how to cook a duck. And I was reading in some of the original stuff that I think Mom actually typed on that Olivet thing that we have, or the Smith Corona or whatever that thing was. But they marketed to the restaurateurs who were going to serve it, and they came up together with the idea that if you're going to cook a duck, you don't do it all on the same day for a couple of reasons. It smokes the house off for one thing, because all the, you know, and you get the duck smell and all that stuff. So you need to, you know, get rid of that. But throughout the process, they did develop the black label, and that was a more meaty, less fat. So you could cook it better and not have all that mess around. But what we learned is that if you do it in 2 phases, start doing the duck first, and do about a 3/4 cook, and then you start on high, and it begins to render the fat down, and then drip out into the drip pans, and then take them off, let them cool, put them in the fridge, and then you do the final bake-off on the night of the serving. So, and it is the absolute best foolproof way of cooking a duck in my estimation. And so that's on here, and then along with Elva Walrath's famous clear orange sauce. Yeah. And even Maple Leaf today, when they stuff the duck, they put in this little packet of brown orange sauce. It's like really yucky. But yeah, it's really. I think it just tried to keep up weight. Is that the? I said that. But anyway, this is Elva's famous orange sauce, clear orange sauce. And it's delicious. So you're welcome to have some of these if you'd like. So I don't know. I don't know if we've got anything else. Blake, yeah.
Well, I did back with the farm, because I worked weekends for just a little bit, but didn't we have to move ducks from one house to another because they outgrew one house? So you actually had to, like a rodeo, like herding cattle, except we would have to herd the ducks from this house over to this one because the house was bigger to provide them more space.
Yeah.
And it was just, thinking back now, there was a lot of ducks to move, and you had to move them outside, down the road, down the driveway, into the next house.
The original brooder place was, I remember where our lunchroom was, the farm lunchroom.
Yeah.
That, which is old and decrepit. I think that was Grandpa Cooper. That was probably Grandpa Williams' old barn. And then we ate in the basement. It was the lunchroom, the employee lunchroom at that point. And then down some old yucky stairs were some brooders, and then we had an old hatchery off to in that one room there too. So they would come in there, and they'd be warm, and they could spend a couple of days there. Then they'd put them in the aisleway, walk them up a ramp to the first building, and then they stayed there for maybe a week, maybe.
I thought a week, yeah.
Yeah, and then under brooders, right, and then constant feed and water, and then we moved into the second, third house, which is across the road, and then we separated them that way. And then they got up to the big houses. Doesn't sound like a jail, but it's like the big houses. And then you move them there at least twice at that point. And in 7 weeks, they probably did have 5 or 6 moves. And then finally, do you remember the big trailer that we used to bring it to take the ducks down to the plant? Yeah, it was an old semi bed.
Yeah.
Yeah, you remember that? Yeah.
Yeah, but they were still using that in the 70s, you know.
Were they really?
Yeah.
Oh, be darned. Well, Dad and Bud and Lenny, they figured out that we need to have a big flatbed thing that you can put a tractor on and haul these ducks down to the plant.
Yeah.
And so they cut off an old semi trailer and put some gates on it, Yeah, they're very, you know, we did that.
The other thing too is, if I remember right, nothing is wasted on a duck.
No,